call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Councilmember Kirkhoff is absent. Approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda? Council? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Joe, seconded by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes of the February 4th, 2026 regular meeting. All received them in your packet. Is there any changes, corrections, clarification needed for within those minutes? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 4th meeting?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. This now brings us to our public open forum. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Call it third time. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Our public open forum is now closed. We have no public hearings. We then go on to reports and presentations. At this time, it was supposed to be County Attorney Janelle Kendall, but we are going to wait until she gets here for doing her report and stick it into the agenda wherever we can. So, Police Department monthly report. Joe?
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I got the monthly report for for January here, and then I also got our year-end report. I'll start with the January report. For January 26, a total of 745 ICRs, down a little bit from 2025 at 770, but right in that same ballpark. I think a lot of it had to do with it was a cold January, so it slows when it's that cold like that for that long period of time. That'll slow down our proactivity a little bit too, because people aren't quite so excited about getting outside of the squad cars, and people are staying home too. But with that, we do see a little bit more of at-home disputes, family disputes, verbal altercations. Some of the highlights for January 2026, agency assists, 15 of them. They're kind of spread out across the board. No agency more than the other. Stearns County's, Todd County Sheriff's Office, State Patrol, 1 or 2 over in Melrose for some late night assists. 13 alarm calls. We had 2 assaults, 8 behavioral health calls. We did 7 parking tickets were written during that time. Medicals or 21 medical emergencies, which is down a little bit from that averaging of 30 a month. 304 traffic stops, 6 thefts, which is a little bit higher than usual. As far as highlights, we did get our squad cars in January. That first squad car, that 26 model, came back on Monday. We dropped off the other one for a swap out. So I'm guessing by the end of next week, both those new squads should be on the road, and I'll get those 2 leases back down to Arden Hills after that. So that all went really smooth. I'll bounce over to our year-end report for 2025. We always like to start if you look at there, we just have our department staff. This was the first year in a bunch of years where we didn't have to train anybody for long-term. Officer Gadim joined our agency last year in January, but he came with 9 years experience in county, so his training was pretty limited. So if you look at our years of service, combined just of officers working at our agency, it's 126 years. But if you add up all the years service, like, Mark Grinstead chose 5 years. Well, he's got 32 years of service before, or including here. He was an officer for how long? Officer Jungles has been here for 17, but has 22 total. Preston Otter, he was here, he's got 6 years of experience, and when Landon came over this year, he brought 9 years also. So we got consistency, and that's a big thing. We got a pretty good range of, Officer Moldenhauer has been working for our agency for 28 years. I mean, we're pretty lucky to have that consistency. If you look at our reportable crimes, everything's pretty much staying, is dropping or staying level. 54 DWIs in 2024, down to 41 in 2025. Still, robberies were still at zeros. Burglaries, we only had one. And I looked up that one burglary today, just out of curiosity what that burglary was. It was a burglary, but it was more of a family dispute where it wasn't like a random person went and did a burglary at someone's house. It was an ongoing family dispute where someone went to someone's house that shouldn't have, but they knew what they were looking for, type of deal. So to have a city our size with basically zero burglaries, it's pretty impressive. Assaults are down, along with domestic assaults. If you look at the big one, our theft numbers. So in 2024, we had 72 thefts. That's including retail and everything else. We're down to, the thing didn't go far enough, but we're down to 35 this year. I attribute a lot of that to the way we're conducting business and spending more time in those areas where we're getting those thefts. We spend a lot of time at our large retail store parked out front and just conducting business out there, and that's deterring some of that theft. Of those thefts, most of those thefts that we did take, we solved most of them. I mean, there's a handful out there we couldn't solve, but most of those, when we're getting these thefts, we're clearing them out. So that's pretty cool. Arsons, we went from 0 up to 1, where we did have the arson on Ash Street, which again, that person was arrested. And that case was closed out as well. The next page, if you look at the traffic violations for 2025, pretty consistent. If you look at the DAS, DACIPS, driving after revocations, no MSODLs, that totals up to 255 people driving in town that don't have a license that we stopped and pulled over. So that's still a pretty high number. We're stopping them, we're getting them off the roadway. One thing we started doing that's slowing some of it down is when we're consistently getting these people that are driving after revocation over and over again, and instead of us just writing them a ticket, we're bringing them to jail now. If you're going to continue to break the law, we're going to bring you down to St. Cloud and you can get booked and released. And that's helping get through some of these people's heads that we're not going to allow it. We're going to bring you to jail. We're not just going to write a ticket and send you off on your way. So we're one of the only agencies in the county that's doing that right now, but we're going to continue because some people just aren't figuring it out. Wireless devices, 188 citations for that, 229 speeding tickets. So those numbers are all pretty consistent. Traffic stops total for the year, 5,054. That turns, I did the average again, that's 13 traffic stops per day. Between our 4 shifts, that's 3.4 stops per day per officer. So those are pretty good numbers. Traffic accidents, 97, or accident totals, I'm not even calling them all traffic. Accidents 97 last year, 97 this year. A lot of those are private property accidents, Walmarts or Coburn's or high school. We just don't have a way to break them down if they're on public streets or not. But I feel like I don't have a number to prove it, but just based off what I've been seeing, like our accidents on Main Street have gone way down. We're just not having the serious accidents on Main Street and Ash Street like we've had in the past. And no real pedestrian accidents. We had a couple e-bikes and bicycle accidents with cars. So that's good. I'd like to see the accident number goes down a little bit, but it's pretty consistent when you look at it from 2022 to 25. Controlled substances crimes are up a little bit. That results from traffic stops. If you look at the miscellaneous calls for 2025, everything's pretty comparable to the years past. Alarm calls, 135. The behavioral health issues are down a little bit at 27. It's tricky for us, 'cause sometimes they get labeled behavioral health, sometimes they'll get labeled a welfare check. But they're kind of one and the same. Ordinance violations, 104, that includes the ordinance violations that we are parking complaints and the summer nuisance stuff. Patrols, again, the patrols are the big one, where we're making sure that we're out at all the sporting events, Sinclair Lewis Days, Walmart's, just showing the color events, basically. And then, 18 trespasses, 10 trespasses, 18 on one persons, for a total of 10,949 instances in 2025. Any questions on any of that activity, or, it's a lot of numbers. You know, it's kind of just a breakdown of everything that come monthly.
Any questions or comments? Keep up the good work.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public Works Department, Ben?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This past month, the outdoor rink, it was well used throughout the season until this past weekend. With the warm temps, we were forced to close the rink, and it will stay closed for the remainder of the season, especially after this rain. There's not really any ice left down there, but it was a good run, and a lot of people used it when we were down there. We did have a beaver dam that was removed near the campground. It was impeding stormwater flow along with Hoboken Creek out to the lake. We did have the DNR approval to do that, so that's all completed and cleaned up. Stormwater ditch south of Fleet Supply, we had approximately 100 yards of sediment removed that was built up in the bottom of that ditch. That was causing some backups of silt and sand into that stormwater pipe, so that's been removed. We had 4 trees removed from the campground in the middle park. They sustained some damage from the storm this past summer, so they had to be taken down for safety purposes. We had an additional tree on First Street North that was also caused from some storm damage this summer, and stump grinding has been taking place and cleanup is now done on all those trees. We had a water main break that occurred on 10th Street. The temps were about 20 below for several days when that happened. The temperature didn't contribute to the break, but it contributed to the issues with getting it fixed. It ran for about 24 hours before we could get it excavated and repaired. It certainly caused some issues with our storm sewer and our streets building up with a thick layer of ice. Fortunately, the temperatures did rise about a week later, and we were able to get all the ice off the street and get everything cleaned up, so that was nice, but it was a mess for a while. We're doing a bunch of storm sewer thawing the past week around town, make sure all our drains are open and working and able to accept water flow. Haven't had anything major. Our normal spot like 7th Street in Maine, we had to jet that storm sewer to get that back open, but everything's been working good there. Our flashing crosswalk signs that were ordered, we're assembling those in our shops, so they'll be prepped and ready to install come spring. There's just a bunch of work. It all comes in pieces, so you gotta put it all together and drill the posts and bolt everything on, so that's all getting done, so it's ready to go. We did do another round of sidewalk snow removal inspections. There were 5 clear days between the last snowfall and when that inspection and removals were completed for those homeowners. We had about 30 properties that received invoices for not doing their snow removal. Airport, we had snow removal in our storm water ditch. That we have to get that out of there, so when we have rainfalls like this, it's able to drain all the water from the hangar pad. So that was done, and then we were also able to remove all of the ice dams in front of the east-facing hangar doors. Those are the ones that build up with ice every year, so those were all cleaned up and back down to concrete. The arena, we've had a lot of tournaments and ice usage during the week and weekends up there. Everything's been working good and smooth. The end of the season is coming up on March 1st, and we'll start taking the ice out that following Monday, March 2nd. So it'll be gone by that Friday of that week, so only 2 weeks left to go there. Senior Center roof project update. They did install the new rubber membrane, and we're just waiting for the sheet metal crew now. So they'll come put all the drip edge and the flashing and final touches on the building along with the gutters. So that should happen sometime in the next couple weeks. Any questions I can answer?
Questions, comments?
This was like maybe a month or 2 ago. I was driving down Main and noticed that one of the vehicles that hauls animal products had a big spill on Main when it was really cold. And we had a lot of equipment out there trying to like chip it away and officers directing traffic.
Correct.
Can we send them a bill for that sort of thing?
Yes, and I know every time the fire department is called, they also send a bill. So
Okay.
that one might not have been billed. We weren't out there a super long time. We just wanted to get it off as quick as we could.
Yeah.
But we certainly can bill them if it's a larger issue for just the street department taking care of. But normally the fire department's there and they're billing that out.
Okay.
Okay. And just for council, the water main break that was up on 10th Street, that one there, now that that ice has been removed, all that water soaked into Getty Street pretty good and broke it up. So you drive down Getty, it's like driving on a cobblestone road. It's bad
Yeah.
now.
Pavement's in tough shape.
So we, just to keep it in your forethought for what we're gonna have to do for a street project, because after that one there, it's really bad. So,
Getty's in tough shape for sure.
yes, so, okay, thank you. Planning Commission Annual Report. Sarah?
Good evening. In your packets, you have a copy of the number of building permits issued by year for like the last 10 years. 2022, I think there might have been a storm right before that at the 258 permits. This year, we issued 222. And then the construction value, the highest one is 2022, 18.9 million. I believe that was part of the Felling trailers. I think they did a $10 million permit for that building. Let's see. And then on the other page, we have author's edition. And so I have the houses that have been constructed, the ones that are sold, and right now we have 6 lots that are for sale. And then I just kind of did a breakdown of the construction costs, but I had to take out the modular homes because the only permit we give for that is just the foundation, because the modular home's already been inspected. So I kind of wanted to break that out of there. So of the homes that weren't modular was like 1.4 million, with the average of those being like 356,000 for the construction cost. Zoning permits throughout the year, it's pretty typical. January, February slow, November, December slow. And it broke it out by the types of permits on the pie chart. So you get a little bit of everything. And then on the land use requests, we had about 20 this year. That varies over the years. And then the breakdown of the types of land use requests, variances are the biggest one. And of those variances, on page 25, 6 of those were for garage variances, so we're doing a lot of those in the past few years. And then just the demographics or population housing, and the census population does not come out until July 2025.
Okay, questions? Concerns? Okay, thank you. Action items, 7A, approve HRA appointment.
So the HRA board runs a March renewal instead of January 1st, and that's why you always see the HRA kind of a few months after the rest of the appointments are made. But the HRA board appointment that we have is one appointment for a 5-year term. Mike Felling's term expires on March 31st, and he has requested to be returned to that position. So that is the request, is to appoint Mike Felling to the position on the HRA board for a 5-year term effective April 1, 2026, and ending March 31st of 2031.
Questions? Concerns? Otherwise, I look for a motion to appoint Mike Felling.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Joel, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. 7B, approve advancement of EMT.
Ambulance Director Brian Zales has presented the following EMT for advancement. He says, effective February 18th, I would like to recommend Richard White be promoted from EMTB Level 1 to a Level 2. This would be a pay increase in line with the city's current pay policy. Richard began his time with the ambulance service on February 18th, 2021. He has been an active member, contributing to staffing both on call and backup when available. So the request is to approve the advancement of Richard White to Level 2 effective February 18th, 2026.
Questions? concerns? Do I have a motion to approve the advancement?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Joe,
I'll second.
second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. 7C, call for public hearing on SCDP grant application.
So as part of the next step, as you know, we've been invited to submit a full application. A part of that is we must conduct a public hearing to hear comments prior to that submittal. So we're recommending the date for this hearing to be at the March 4th council meeting, which is coming up in 2 weeks. And then this would allow the city to proceed with completion. And at that public hearing, what we would be doing is presenting the proposal and then giving the public an opportunity to ask questions and submit comments to be included in the application. So all I'm looking for tonight is to call for the public hearing. That'd be for Wednesday, March 4th at 6:30 PM.
Okay, questions or concerns? Otherwise, do I have a motion to make that March 4th date the public hearing?
Motion.
Motion by Heidi, seconded by Scott. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Unfinished business, Trunk Highway 71 update.
So Keith is going to be here to talk about the update, but we did get some cost participation ratios from MnDOT, because we kept talking about how much of it's going to be our share, and I did list that in there. 10% of the parking lanes, 50% of the standard lighting cost, plus any additional cost for decorative lighting. On the north end roundabout, we have to pay for the Fifth Street leg, because more than 10% of more than 5% of the traffic that uses the roundabout goes out Fifth Street. It's actually closer to 10% goes up that way. So we're responsible for that. Will be 1/3 of the Wobegon Trail connection, 100% of any streetscaping. That's if we do the colored concrete, benches, trees, anything like that. 100% of the city utilities, which would be water and sewer. 8% of the construction engineering for the city's share that we would pay MnDOT. And I believe there's also a 3% admin for paying the bills. She doesn't have that on there. And then 100% of any of the storm costs attributed to the city that's within the corridor. And then, of course, 100% of all our costs outside the corridor. And we do not know yet how much MnDOT can contribute to the storm sewer outside the corridor for disposing of their water through our system. So the storm split is still undecided. And what we're going to be needing to do shortly now is if we decide to do our project earlier, that we would need to determine what the scope of that project is. And Keith, I think, has more information. You can kind of continue with that.
Yeah, I'll continue a little bit. I don't have a lot to add. I think Vicki covered it pretty well. We did have let's call it kind of a coordination, preliminary design sort of meeting with MnDOT last Friday. And really the main thing that we got out of that is it is going to be in our best interest to do the city's portions of the work, so not including, obviously, the Trunk Highway 71 corridor separately, and do that. Ideally, we really need to do that in 2027, so it's done before 2028 comes when MnDOT starts their project. The thoughts are, one is to keep them separate. It allows, because of the environmental things that they have to do, permitting they have to do, the historic preservation things. By taking ours out of there, it just makes it a lot simpler from their perspective because we don't have to go through all that kind of thing. So, and then just from a traffic perspective as well, our parts at least up to 71 are kind of done. Makes, we think, the traffic a little bit easier for people to be able to get around during the 71 construction phase of the project. Yes, there would be some additional costs for us because of the temporary connections and then reconnecting things for the sewer, water, those kinds of things at the 71, junction, if you will, for all the side streets. But they believe, and I think after our discussions, we believe that's probably the right thing to do. It puts us, assuming we go forward, puts us in a little bit of a fix in terms of we need to get moving going forward with it. We still have enough time, so the good news is it's not like we're really under the gun. It's just that we need to keep moving forward so we can get By doing so, if we choose to go this way, we can actually complete then the feasibility report, which we need to do for assessments, because we sort of get rid of all those things that we don't know from MinDOT in terms of some of those cost participations. We can ignore that for now, focus on just the side streets, and then later we'll have to do another report because we're gonna have to do assessments for the 71, and then at that time, we should hopefully know all the information we need so we can put that together for them. But we have to do those reports before we can, order improvements and move forward with those kinds of things. So it just breaks it into two pieces, and I have looked at so far kind of preliminarily what this breakdown based upon the cost basically you've already seen. I have broken it down one, and I provided this information to Vicki actually, so she has it in hand, but kind of what each street costs, I have those broken down. I have it also by assessment categories, like major assessment categories broken down that way. And we have the ability to then sort of take out, okay, well, if it's just all the streets, if we do it essentially of that 11.2 something, roughly $1 million, about just short of $4 million of it is Trunk Highway 71 itself. Now, that being said, that does not include some of these costs that we don't know in terms of our share of costs, storm sewer, the tree rings, landscaping, those kinds of things on 71. So that's not included in those numbers, but just utility numbers, sewer, water, services is just short of $4 million for that. So it means the balance, about 7 million something, is the city's side streets, includes the bypass road, all those kinds of things are included in that. So we thought the next steps, logical steps might be to actually maybe bring this to operations, just sit down and kind of talk through everything. We could look at all the costs. We can think about how this is going to go. I think maybe some preliminary of how this could be funded, how that's going to work out. I think Vicki's got some thoughts and has to look through of how we can do this, just because of how the bonding goes and how that relates to the sales tax, so that we can, because we may have to front load some of that funding, and Vicki can maybe address that a little bit better than I can on that. But those are things we thought maybe we could talk about those things, come back to the council and say, here's kind of the recommendations from there of how to proceed, and then it's up to the council if you wish to make that step and move forward with it. So that's kind of where we're at. I think the biggest change is it looks like we really should entirely separate everything but 71 from the rest of the project and do that separately.
Okay, questions?
I have one, when it comes to the assessment piece of it, so like corner lots, now they're gonna be assessed twice. Once for the Trunk Highway 71, once for the side street, correct?
The first thing you said, what will be assessed?
The corner lot.
The corner
corners.
lots, yeah, because what we won't have is the cost for 71. So yes, the corner lots could indeed have another assessment that could, include the other costs. Or we can make our best estimate of what we believe those are, and we could, because they're only going to get charged for storm sewer and for sewer and water. By the time, preliminarily, we'd really have to be making a guess at it. By the time we get to final assessments, we would probably have a much better idea of what those numbers are from the state in terms of the storm sewer particularly, what those would be. And depending on also, that would be another thing for the operations is what are we going to do with, and are we going to assess any of the things such as, this landscaping, the streetscaping, where are those dollars, who's going to pay for those? Is that coming out of the sales tax? That's not part of the assessment. Those are things that ultimately you all have to answer, give us some guidance as to how you feel you want to do those things. And it has a bearing as to those corner lots. The corner lots will be the most difficult ones, obviously, because it's tough to assess and then right away, a year later, essentially, assess them again, for additional, but we might have to.
I guess my concern on that is if we're gonna be doing this as a separate project, it's obviously an increased cost to the city. So is that gonna be an increased cost to the homeowners? Because now we're incurring a higher cost because we're doing it separate with the temporary connections and digging in twice. Is that gonna be passed on? I guess that's my concern with,
Well, all those would be sewer and water, which typically at this stage are being paid for by the PUC. So it would be a cost actually that they would have. Ultimately, yes, that does get back to all the users in rates and all those kinds of things. But that's where those dollars would be on sewer and water side of things. So that would be a PUC cost, but, you know, those costs do impact the community as a whole.
The one thing is on that, our standard assessment schedule states, what is it, 50% of the long side of a
Yep.
corner lot. So basically, that's with any street project we do. If you have a corner lot, you get assessed 50% of what,
And for
It's
residential.
for
Commercial, they get
residential.
both,
yeah,
yeah.
150 feet.
Which,
So then 3 years later, if we went into residential and did the other street that went on there, yeah, they're gonna get 2 assessments, but they've already got the deduction on the long side of their property. So if we follow our actual assessment schedule, it isn't quite as bad.
yeah, it's not too bad, and I'm thinking off the top of my head from, I don't have everyone memorized, obviously, but I don't believe there's a lot of residential ones that would be significantly impacted, because most of them are within or have a little bit more than 150 feet. So I don't think it's that big of a problem, but I'm sure there's a few. But all the commercial ones, they do not get the 150 feet. They get assessed both sides fully. So that wouldn't have a bearing on them because they would be assessed anyway, so.
And that's one of the things is if we, with the sales tax, the way I understand it, the sales tax could adjust whether, who's getting assessed, how much the assessment, if there is an assessment for the Highway 71 side. So if we don't have the money, then it's gonna change, but if we got enough money to cover that, there's probably gonna be a break for the people for their Highway 71 frontage.
Yeah, and I think that's a big discussion that has
Yes,
to happen.
and we don't know what that's gonna be.
Because we need to think about fairness of people who have been assessed, you know, before or for other projects. People who are coming in the future are going to be assessed on projects, and how does that sales tax play into this particular project? What things should be covered, what things maybe shouldn't be covered, because it's not fair for previous assessments, you know, future assessments. Those are things that we're going to have to wrestle through and figure all those things out.
I know the community and a few other boards that I'm on are looking at trying to fix everything right now, but when you have all these unknown numbers, it's really hard to do it. There is no clear answer until we get closer to the end. And then that's already set. You said temporary storm sewer connections. Now, if we had our storm sewer already taken care of and we're gonna do anything for the street, and they come through with 71, they'd hook into our storm sewer and it'd be all their cost. So that's the way I would see it.
Be all their costs, we'll have to connect, thankfully, a lot of the storm sewer is like right at the intersection. So those pieces can be done with the 71 project. They're, you know, basically at the intersections of 71. There are a few that are up the street a ways. So think about 2nd Street South is an example. A little piece on 8th Street South. There's some small pieces, but most of it is within the 71 corridor itself. So not a lot would have to be done on the storm sewer side of things with the city's portions of the project. Most of that is related to 71
I'm looking at the fact that if we do it all in 27 and go through it, when the state comes through, they're gonna hook up to our line. There shouldn't be any additional cost to us.
For the storm sewer, I would argue, yes, that they're making those connections, they should pay for those.
Right.
You know, but the cost share is what our portion of the water, it's just a matter if we have, let's just use, we have 100 gallons of water, we have 10 gallons of it, and they have 90 gallons, we're gonna pay 10% of all of those costs. So-
Whether the line's existing or not.
Correct.
Okay.
And, you know, think about A Street South to the east side. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, is we're still working through those. So like the 100% that's in here of the storm attributed within corridor, yes. And everything outside, they have to pay for their share of stormwater that is going off of their corridor. They're still trying to figure out exactly how they're gonna do that. But they've acknowledged that if it's their water, you know, they're gonna have to pay for their share of their water. That's off the corridor. We have to work through all those details, but at least there's a working understanding that they have to pay for their share of the water.
One of the things that I found out was, you know, with the Fifth Street being hooked into our roundabout, or the roundabout up there on the north end, is based on the percentage of do you happen to know how much the county's getting assessed for all the traffic that's coming off of St. Clair Lewis going into the roundabout downtown?
I do not off the top of my head, I don't know if he knows that. but-
Okay, I'm just thinking if we gotta pay a certain percentage based on traffic, that's St. Clair Lewis is a county road. So they better be getting an assessment too, otherwise.
So far, they haven't said anything to us about costs for that roundabout. It's only been the north one, so.
Right.
You know, that could come up potentially, but they have not said anything about that at this stage.
See, yeah, the reason why I'm even bringing that up is because it was kind of a surprise that all of a sudden we have to pay for our share of putting traffic from Fifth Street into that roundabout, when at first it's never been discussed.
Right.
And they're the ones putting the roundabout in.
Well, and that's the reason why, if we have absolutely no say in the design on what's going, because it's their highway, how do we get charged for a street that they say is gonna hook into it, but because you got this much traffic, you're gonna pay so much? To me, it's kind of like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I also don't know the details they haven't got into, because it's a four-legged roundabout. So does that
Right.
mean we're paying 25% of the cost? Or, oh yeah, sorry, three-legged. So are we paying 33% of the cost?
Right.
Or is there some, in terms of size of roadway and that, are we paying something that's less than 33%? I don't know the answer to that at the moment.
Because it wasn't any of us that I know of that said that that we have to hook Fifth Street into it. That was their design, and they told us we didn't have nothing to say about their design, but where you're gonna get billed for it. To me, I got a problem with that, and I'll talk to them about it, but.
Well, we'd have to at least hook up to something. There'd have to be some intersection there, because we'd have to have Fifth in Maine, the extension to the north, connected some way, shape, or form. In this case, they're going with a roundabout.
Right.
You know, maybe could have been something
And
else.
I know it's
but
probably
Roundabout's
is,
more expensive.
yeah, so. Okay, any other questions, concerns? Okay,
It changes every day, so.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Just a couple follow-ups there in relation to what Scott was talking about, the assessments. I would like to have it end up being just one assessment, because we wouldn't do the final till the fall of '27, so we would really know those final numbers.
Yep.
And so how that gets incorporated into there. We're just working on how that financing works if the funding for this project has to be paid for before we bond for the second project. So we're working on those numbers. And then also on the leg of the roundabout, we're not paying for the circular roundabout, but after the lane from the outside edge of the lane into Fifth, that's the piece that we pay for.
Right.
And they do have a diagram that I can share with you. MnDOT says that if it's contributes less than 5% of the traffic, then they just pick it up because it's insignificant, but because it's 10% of the traffic, that's why we get tasked
Because
with
of the
that
hospital.
share of it, so.
Because
Yeah.
of the hospital.
There's a lot of cost-sharing numbers being pushed around, and
It's kind of like we're paying for all of this, you have no say in it,
That's
but
being
now
pushed
everything
onto
we add in is gonna cost you, you know? That's the part that's getting sticky, so,
But on the other hand, their new cost participation manual is favorable to the city. So
right,
maybe it was good that it got delayed a
because
little
they'll be
bit.
paying 100% of the sidewalk.
So,
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Okay,
so my question is, do we want this to go to operations so they can sit down street by street and come back with a recommendation? Do we keep them all in? Or
Wouldn't
which
hurt.
do we do?
might as well. We
And
got
if we do
time.
that, then we would start that, get that feasibility report in, get that public hearing called, to get moving forward on that piece
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, because
Year to act.
well, yeah, we'd want to, if we were to do it in 27, we'd want to have the public hearing and the assessment hearings and everything all ready this fall.
Yep.
So we had to move quick on it, so. Okay, I would, general consent, go to operations?
Yep, I agree.
Okay, sounds good. I see Janelle is here, so we're gonna ask her to come up and do her report.
It is snowing to be bad out there.
Is it really?
Guys, it's a
Okay.
beautiful place, it's beautiful, as long as you're not driving, and I'm
Yeah,
not.
and you're not, yeah.
Could have brought my Volkswagen with the all-wheel drive, but I thought,
They go through a lot of snow.
Yeah.
All right, are we rolling?
Yes.
Are we live stream? Okay. My name is Janelle Kendall. I'm the Stearns County Attorney, and I am also contracted to be your city attorney. So here to give you the annual update. We'll start with the letter on the front, talking about our diversion program. You did have one adult that qualified for diversion, but as has been the pattern the last few years, we're seeing less and less first-time offenders. Crime generally is down, which we'll also talk about a little bit, but the diversion program is truly for people who have not interacted with the court system before, and there are just less and less of them. So to the extent that we're still seeing criminals, we tend to be seeing more of the frequent flyers than the new persons. But do please continue to give us your public service things, if there's some painting, some cleaning up, some things like that we can do. We still have enough people going through the diversion program, and we take those projects first from the cities that we contract with. So we have had a number of city projects that we've been able to do with the diversion people, both adult and kids this year. But you just had one, but as we've talked about in the past, we would probably have somebody from Albany come up here and vice versa, so that they're not doing their community service in their own community. So that's diversion, and then the one that is red and blue are your city contract numbers. Yours are still pretty strong. I just came from Albany. They're the two cities that have remained kind of right up there. Some of the rest of them have dropped off, less citations, part of that having to do with marijuana. But your numbers are still strong. They're good tickets. We're able to prosecute them. Chief Jensen does an awesome job up here. He's got a lot of newer officers and just really training them well. They were participatory in our first, we developed a statewide law enforcement training. There was kind of a complaint from the county attorneys around the state. We get together on a Zoom call every Wednesday morning. We've been doing that since the middle of 2020 so that people could kind of know what's going on. And people were really concerned that with the amount of law enforcement turnover that we had during that time, the amount of young officers on, that there just wasn't as much training available on real basic things like report writing and testifying and child protection cases. And when you first roll in on that, what do you do? So we literally developed it here in Stearns County, and I invited my chiefs and my law enforcement to come, and my colleagues from all over the state came. We had 14 county attorneys there that day to talk about what do we really need, because I knew my cops would tell me. We got really good feedback, and that's now going on all over the state. We're going to do it again in April. So these numbers are strong in part because these are cases that we can prosecute. They're following the law, they're following the Constitution, they're doing it right, and we can then prosecute those cases. And as we turn then to that last page, the one with the green are the number of the felonies, and as you can see, those are pretty consistent with last year. Crime numbers generally are down across the state, across the United States. In Minnesota, we specifically saw not what I expected when they legalized marijuana. Remember I told you, open up your checkbooks, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
They're home with the munchies sitting on their couch. It hasn't happened candidly the way that we thought. But here's the problem it's caused. The way that we used to search cars for drugs and guns was because as we did the traffic stop, they rolled down the window and the marijuana smoke rolled out, and now we're into the car. We can't get into the car. And it wasn't the marijuana we were looking for. It took a truckload to get to a felony. It was the meth and the fentanyl and the cocaine. We can't get into the cars like we used to. And you have a high rider here that came into Sauk Center, and so we're working on that. Pretty soon we'll have a way to test for a marijuana impairment, the same way that we test for alcohol impairment, but we're seeing a significant drop in the drug numbers, especially those low-level felonies that we used to get out of traffic stops, and likewise, we're finding less guns. So, wasn't an expected result of the marijuana change in the law, but that's part of why the numbers are down. The Justice Center, if you saw this last Tuesday, the Justice Center came in significantly under budget. Yay. Significantly. We got 250 some bids, and it looks like about 60% of that work is gonna go local. So we're really excited that it's under budget, and we're even more excited that a lot of that money is gonna be able to stay in Stearns County. Because the sales tax will pay for a little over half of that. A little over half of that comes from people who don't live in Stearns County. It just ended up being a really cost-effective way to get that long-term expensive project done. So the county board just voted on that on Tuesday, and now those bids will be coming in, so you'll also be seeing that more likely. So come on down to that meeting when they talk about really what the bids are and all of the details that'll go into that project. As I assume you know, as you're leaving St. Cloud, coming by Fleet Farm, there's that big open, that's where it's gonna be, that big open space on the right. It's gonna be a lot easier for you. It's gonna be a lot easier for people on the west end of the county, which is a lot of people, to be able to get there. So lots of good news coming out. I'm glad crime numbers are down. I'm a little concerned that we're not finding the drugs and guns that we used to, but we're working on it. Questions?
Questions? Is your contract number gonna go down then too, since crime number's down?
No. If they paid my people less, it would. It's been good. The only thing that I've been losing, knock on wood, the only thing I lose attorneys to is the bench. 3 in the last year.
Really?
So we've got a lot of senior attorneys there.
Yeah.
A lot of people who've been there for a long time, but our trial numbers remain at that record level. The incoming crime is less, but we're trying a lot higher percentage of our cases than we used to. We tried 4 homicides last year alone, for example.
I
On
wasn't,
trial, we'll have trial.
I wasn't gonna let you off without answering
It's
one
fair.
question,
It's
so.
fair.
Okay, thank
You guys
you.
have good questions, yeah.
All right.
Usually got a few questions
Okay.
out of this group.
Nothing else? Okay, thank you.
All right,
Have
and
a
thanks
safe
for
trip
waiting
home.
for me, and drive safe on the way home. I have a good driver. You're on your own.
All right, thanks. Okay, then we will move on to new business, the legislative updates.
It's the time of the year that the legislature is going to go back into session, actually yesterday, and they'll be in session for 12 weeks. That's when they do their thing. I was involved in a meeting where they talked about the different things that are going to be working on this year, and I brought a few that may have interest to the city. The one thing is that with the House being tied at 67 each, and the Senate has a 1-vote majority, probably not a lot of work is going to get accomplished this year. They did a biennium budget last year, so they really don't have to do anything this year if they don't want to. So, except I would like them to respond to those 30 requests they got for sales tax from the various cities. Their priorities at the legislature, they're saying they want to try to pass some some more legislation to allow governors to ban guns in the buildings, in the public buildings. This is kind of in response to, they're doing a lot more safety and security down there. After last year, you know, they had the assassination of one of their members and her husband, and then, so they're looking at that a lot more closely. And then with a lot of things that are going on in the world, they want local governments to have more control. I mean, out here in outstate Minnesota, I don't see that happening so much as cities wanting to pass that or to take advantage of that legislation, but it's something that we get asked to do occasionally from members of the public. Like I said, on the bonding bill, there's a lot of cities that have applied to be included in the bonding bill. They said that's unlikely to be passed this year because of the tied legislature. There's a couple of things they're working on, though, is that duty disability. When people retire on disability and then their government needs to pay their health insurance till they turn 65, and that can be like 20 years sometimes. They're looking at some changes to that. They're looking at all their capital investment funding, they're gonna just limit it to asset preservation. They're not doing a bunch of new things this year. So cities that asked for money for that, probably not gonna happen. And the one thing that they were able to stop last year was the Yes to Homes bill, which is, what tries to limit zoning ability for the cities. Like if you're zoned residential, all residential fits. So you can have apartments or fourplexes or triplexes or single family. They now have scaled that down some, and so we probably wouldn't be affected because we're too small of a city. Because if we were gonna go out to Morning View and put a fourplex in there, would our utilities that are underground be able to sustain it? And so that's kind of how they've had some opt-outs in there if your utilities can't support it. So they're kind of narrow focused this year, and then next year it'll probably be more bright. That's kind of normal for them to do that, simply because of their every 2-year election that they have. But like I said, 30 cities have requested sales tax this year. A couple of things, there's no new money to cities in any of the programs, but they did not cut LGA, so that was a win. The cannabis aid that they had, we're gonna be charging this tax to all the retailers, and then they were gonna spread it out to the cities that had retail establishments. They decided to keep that funding for the state, so there'll be no cannabis aid to the cities to help monitor those businesses. And like I said, the capital investment requests by the cities, the league is feeling that those won't pass. But so this year at the state, I don't know how much will be done. Usually there's a significant amount of money that can get passed on to cities, but there just isn't this year. So, but we have seen significant funding in past years, so I think we're still ahead of the game.
Right.
But
Okay. Questions, concerns? Okay, we'll then move on to our consent agenda. We have a schedule of claims, unpaid claims of $277,377.26 for a total of the same. January checks, paid claims and payroll of $2,214,863.94. We have a gambling application for exempt permit request from the Sauk Center Trap Team for a raffle on June 10th, 2026 at Sauk Center High School, and a gambling application for exempt permit request from the Knights of Columbus, Council 4863 for bingo and a raffle from July 29th to August 2nd, 2026 at the Stearns County Fairgrounds. Is there any questions or concerns about the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Joe, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Scott. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries 4 in favor, none against. We have no informational items. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So,
Motion by Heidi, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.